Friday.
There are some puzzling developments tonight in the ongoing search for Nancy Guthrie.
This week, as black
it is now day
SUV
69 in the search for Nancy Guthrie.
Investigation into the disappearance of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie took a visible turn.
Some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Into the
limitations that her own daughter told investigators on the record that on her best days she could maybe reach the mailbox. Most days, not even that. Her sheriff, the man whose department was responsible for finding her, told CBS News directly that she could not walk 50 yards on her own. Not an estimate, not a theory. The documented words of the two people who knew her condition best. Now hold that image. Because on the night of January 31st, that same woman was dropped at her front door at 9:48 p.m. alone. In the dark, in a rural neighborhood with no streetlights, and the car that delivered her was gone exactly 2 minutes after her garage door opened. The man who drove her home told investigators she was safely inside. When the sheriff repeated that to the New York Times, and for 71 days, that 2-minute confirmation has been treated as established fact. Tonight, this video does something no other channel has done directly. It places every verified detail of that drop-off in sequence and asks the one question the official account has never answered. What does safely inside actually require? And does 2 minutes get you there? Welcome. Wherever you are watching from tonight, pause for one moment. Lift a prayer for Nancy Guthrie right now. Lord, move in this case. Open the eyes of anyone who has seen something and stayed silent. Trouble the conscience of anyone sitting on information they have been afraid to share. Bring Nancy home. Type amen right now and tell us where in the world you are praying from tonight. Your prayer matters. Your tip could be the one that changes everything. Day 71. No arrest, no named suspect, no confirmed location. The car that drove Nancy home is still physically being disassembled at a mechanic shop, and the account of that drop-off remains the official last word on her safety. Here is the verified timeline. At 5:32 p.m. on January 31st, Nancy arrived at her daughter Annie's home via Uber, a 4-mile drive from her own house in Tucson, documented by Pima County Sheriff's Department. She stayed approximately 4 hours. Dinner, family time, the kind of Saturday evening she showed up for her entire life. At 9:48 p.m., Tommaso Cion drove her home. 10-minute drive. At 9:50 p.m., the garage door closed. Sion's car left, confirmed by neighbor ring camera footage and garage door logs. Then nothing. 4 hours of silence. At 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera disconnected. At 2:12 a.m., a motion sensor activated. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker lost connection to her iPhone and Apple Watch, and Nancy Guthrie was never seen again. That window, from 9:50 p.m. to 1:47 a.m., is nearly 4 hours. In those 4 hours, a woman who could not walk 50 yards alone was inside a house that a masked individual had already visited before that night, confirmed by FBI footage. The official account says she was safe. The question is what safe actually required to be true. For Cion to have confirmed Nancy was safely inside, one of 3 things had to be true. He walked her personally through the garage and into the house. He remained in the car and watched until she was visibly secure. Or he waited for a specific signal from her, a wave, a light turning on, something that confirmed she had made it. None of those 3 scenarios have been confirmed or described by any named source. What has been confirmed is that 2 minutes passed between the garage door opening and his car leaving. That is the entire window. Now place those 2 minutes against what the record says about who Nancy was physically. She could not walk 50 yards alone. She was in tremendous pain most days. She took an Uber to her daughter's house because that was the extent of what her body could manage on a good evening. And the man who drove her home confirmed her safety in the time it takes to boil water. Then there is the security gate. A neighbor speaking on record confirmed Nancy had a locked metal security gate on her front door. Her assessment was precise. You are not getting through that from the outside. Someone would have had to open it from within, which means whoever entered that home that night either had a key, was let in, or was already there before Nancy arrived. The back doors answer part of that. When Annie and Cion arrived the following morning, both back doors were propped open. The family initially wondered if an ambulance had come during the night. Former FBI agent Raymond Carr confirmed on News Nation that the blood found on the front porch and front steps establishes that Nancy left through the front of the home, not the back. That sequence points in one direction. Someone entered from the back, someone exited from the front with Nancy. and the back doors were left open behind them. Who had prior knowledge of that entry point has never been publicly addressed. The institutional record around this investigation is documented, and it matters. Former Pima County Sheriff and United States Surgeon General Richard Carmona stated publicly that Sheriff Nanos made a fundamental error by personally declaring the crime scene released. His exact words, "That is not something a sheriff does." Footage confirmed a pizza delivery vehicle drove across Nancy's front lawn while the investigation was still active. Nanos responded publicly that he had no regrets about releasing the scene. His own deputies issued a no-confidence vote on March 24th. The Pima County Board of Supervisors voted unanimously to compel his testimony under oath, and the DNA collected from the scene was sent not to the FBI's forensic lab, which was offered at no cost, but to a private lab in Florida that described the evidence mixture as challenging and estimated processing at weeks, months, or possibly a year. C.C. Moore, the country's most credentialed forensic genealogist, has publicly confirmed that deconvolution software is now active on this evidence. 3 documented contradictions remain unreconciled in the public record. Kion confirmed Nancy was safely inside. Nancy could not walk 50 yards alone. 2 minutes does not verify that. It assumes it. All family members were publicly cleared on February 16th. Kion's Honda CR-V has remained in law enforcement custody for 71 days and is currently being physically disassembled at a mechanic shop. Cleared individuals do not have their vehicles held for 71 days unless that car continues producing independent investigative value. NetCurly reporting identified Annie as the person who drove Nancy home. Days into the investigation, the sheriff corrected that. It was Kion. The person identified as the last to confirm Nancy's safety was wrong for the most critical days of the investigation. That correction was never publicly explained. Here is what the full picture generates. Whoever took Nancy Guthrie did not arrive randomly. They knew the camera positions. They knew the security gate. They knew the back door. They visited the property before February 1st, confirmed by FBI footage. And whoever approached that front door at 1:47 a.m. moved without hesitation. No searching, no uncertainty. That is not someone who found an address online. That is someone who already knew exactly where they were going and why. Nancy Ellen Long Guthrie was born January 27, 1942. And she lived in the same Tucson house since 1975. She showed up for the people she loved even when her body made that painful. She trusted the people around her without question. Somewhere between 9:50 p.m. and 2:28 a.m., that trust became the entry point. Day 71. No arrest, no named suspect. The car is still at the mechanic. The DNA is still in Florida. If you know anything, call 1-800-CALL-FBI or go to tips.fbi.gov. The reward is over $1 million and fully anonymous. Type Amen for Nancy right now. Tell us where you are watching from and what you believe happened in that 4-hour window. Drop it in the comments. When the electronic vehicle data from that Honda is released, this channel will have the complete breakdown first. Make sure you are subscribed. This case is still moving and Nancy Guthrie is still missing.